Hello and welcome back to the Free-to-Play game monetization course. In this lecture we will spend some time on the criticism that has developed around the Free-to-Play game monetization model. I believe it makes good sense to be aware of these discussions if you are considering designing a free-to-play game. It helps you avoid some of the main pitfalls. The first and most audible criticism towards the free-to-play game monetization model is that many free-to-play games turn into so-called pay-to-win games. Let's check if your game is likely to be pay-to-win via a short quiz. First question: do you allow players to unlock things in your game? No? Do you provide for any other things that players can purchase in the game with real money? If not, your game is not pay-to-win. If you don't provide unlocks, but players can still make purchases in your game, you have to ask yourself a last question. Can the player buy anything that would allow him or her to boost experience or to skip waiting time? If not, your game is not pay to win. If you do allow purchase of assets that allow a player to boost experience or advance in time, you are in fact offering a pay to win environment. Now let's follow the other track. Your game does in fact have an unlock system. In that case, the next question would be if your players can unlock the items via real money purchase. No? Well, then you're in the clear. Your game is not pay to win. If you do allow for purchase of unlocks with real money, there is a third question to ask. Does the use of the unlocked items in fact alter the course of the game? In other words, does the player have a better chance of advancement in the game? If that's a no, well, in that case your game is still not considered pay to win. And I guess it's quite obvious that answering this question with yes would be a very clear sign that your game has a pay to win element to it. So what's wrong with pay to win? In some multiplayer free-to-play games, players who are willing to pay for special items may be able to gain a significant advantage over those playing for free. In the extreme cases, players that do not spend money will have no chance to win in these games, and they will have no chance of competing with the paying players on a level playing field, regardless of how much time they spend in the game. A common suggestion for avoiding pay-to-win environments is that real money payments should only unlock cosmetic assets in the game. In other words, the chances of winning or progression should not be influenced through payment. Any of the customization suggestions that I gave you in a previous lecture come into play here. But you can also decide to provide more content to players, like maps and alternative paths through the story, rather than granting the player actual progression. One option to deal with the negative effects of pay to win is the division of the player base into a league of people that pay to advance and a league of people that advance solely via gameplay. We rarely see a direct division in leagues, but there are a lot of games that will restrict a player's options to attack to players that are a certain number of levels lower than themselves. That is limiting the degree to which paying players can advance by simply competing with less advanced players, paying or non-paying. So players that invest heavily in a game will, as they grow stronger, be matched with other players of a similar level. In these cases, the players that bought their progression in the game may actually suffer from a lack of experience in the game. The non-paying players will have most likely played many more matches to arrive at the same level. Another concern with free-to-play games is that these games constantly ask the player to buy extra content, and this can quickly become very annoying. If you make people wait hours for every single upgrade of a building, maybe it's not so surprising that these games only engage the people that are willing to spend money on these games. And even if it's not perceived as annoying, one could argue that free-to-play games where you have to pay to progress could have an addictive effect on some people, similar to gambling. After all, these free-to-play games ask you to put in small amounts of money at a time to continue playing, similar to slot machines. If players were asked to pay for their total investment in one go, I don't think many current free-to-play players would go for it. There's also been a lot of criticism towards games targeted at children, who may not always be aware of paying for content with real money. You may be familiar with the Smurfberry story, even though it's already a few years old. The story is about a kid in the United States who spent $1,400 on the hard currency used in a mobile Smurfs game. Daddy had set his password in the App Store to automatically approve purchases. And so for this child there was no restriction to making purchases in the game. And it's only fair that parents are challenging the app stores to pay better attention to the fact that many kids use smartphones and tablets these days, and that perhaps they should be protected against overly commercial and sometimes downright sneaky payment promotions. I mean, why does King swap the next button in Candy Crush Saga with an equally sized and colored buy button every few plays? I even consider that evil practice, and I'm sure by now you have come to know me as quite the commercial guy. Very recently, even the term free-to-play itself has gotten major attention from the European legislators. They argue that the term is misleading, as the term free would imply 100% free. They may or may not be right, but I'm sure it will be a while before the guys in Brussels will come to a verdict, and no doubt publishers of free-to-play games will have jointly decided on a new term by that time. I'm sure there are additional points of criticism with regards to the free-to-play business model, and I invite you to post your views in the comments section of this lecture. Perhaps we can have an interesting discussion between the students here. This lecture concludes this course, but we will give you a quick overview of the discussed topics in a concluding lecture. Let's meet back here for lecture 12.